Welcome to a new episode of Riyada, a podcast about entrepreneurship in the MENA region from the Middle East program at the Wilson Center. I'm Marissa Khurma, and my co-host is Hamad Al Awari of Saudi Arabia from Amman, Jordan. Today's guest is from Qatar. He's a stand-up comedian, an entrepreneur, an MC, and a storyteller, and many more. We're very fortunate to be talking today to Hamad Al Awari. Welcome to Riyada, Hamad, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk. I love talking. So, thanks for considering me on the podcast, and I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So I guess the question that we always kick off on this podcast is, what is your story? How did you become all these things? An entrepreneur, a comedian, an artist, a storyteller. What does it all mean? Tell us about your journey.
I feel like I'm still in the middle of the journey. It started, I guess, from a very young age. I was a troublemaker from I was a pain to my mother and the teachers and everyone who was around, full of energy, straight A student, but at the same time, the kind of mischief that you would get to in your young years. And then much later on in life, I went to university to actually study biomedical sciences so that I could go and become a doctor. And then I did 4 years of that and decided that it's not for me. And I just dropped out and came back to Doha. And that opened up. I played golf for around 3 months and my parents got a little annoyed. So they're like, are you going to get on with your life? Or are you going to, go to uni, get a job? So I was like, fine, I'll get a job. So I got a job, and I think it's kind of an amalgamation of so many things over the years, but I was always interested in different people and how different people come together and work together. And I was very much into what I later realized was the mind and not the body. So I was always fascinated by people, and from the academic side in school, they would tell me, "Oh, you're fit for a doctor. You should be a doctor. You should, So that was kind of your options were doctor, engineer, lawyer. That's what it's like in the Arab world, So to go there and come back and say, I want to be an artist, it's something that kind of was challenging. But I got the ability to understand that I could just work with people from all over the world, different ages, and build kind of a good rapport with so many of them. And over the years, you realize that you've amassed a network of people that just have mutual respect, and you guys excite each other and intellectually challenge each other. So everything led to where we are today. And what really kind of broke the doors was when I tried stand-up comedy in 2011, November. So over 11 years. That was the first time I went on stage. And that opened up the door into communication and marketing. And then I set up my own marketing agency after working in the industry here in Qatar for around 5 years. I can't kind of say the skills of the people skills, the soft skills, the things that you'd had that no one taught you in school, They came out to be the things that I rely mostly on, and they keep going. And the storytelling element of it is, it's so much easier to kind of find the common ground and work on the common human elements between us, rather than kind of box people into a place where you think, oh, this guy is from here, he lives here, therefore he must, there's no conclusion until you sit and hear people's stories. So in a nutshell, that's my story.
So I'm really fascinated with, you talked about the first time you went on stage and tried stand-up comedy. What was that like? That must have been quite a breakthrough moment for you. And how did it come about?
So I still till this day have like a fear of standing on stage. Like, I don't know how, but it's still there. And that was like in that moment, if I can try and painful, exciting, the amount of fear that was going through me and the amount of preparation that I had to do. One of my close friends, Muhammad Kamal, he was the one who got me into it, and he made it sound like I had your name on the list. And if you don't show up, you've got your time slot, you know. So it was like, okay, fine. You know, I don't think I'm funny anyway. It's just the way I tell stories, probably, that might do it. So I then went to find out that it was like in a corridor outside of a restaurant, and there was around 25 people there, and we were like the it was like the opening of the restaurant, and if you wanted some entertainment, there is some outside, and that was us, the stand-up comedians who were trying to put on the show for the walk-through guests.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, I got on the stage. It was kind of like reciting what I had been preparing for the month beforehand, or the couple of weeks beforehand. And it was about locking the 5 minutes. So I would do it and do it and do it. And when I got on stage, it turned into 11 minutes because I had no idea what timing was, what spacing of a laugh was, or what kind of, you know. But it was coming off the stage. It's like a high that nothing else gave you in terms of what your ability was, you know. Like the amount of fear that you overcome, and then you get the first laugh, and you're like, this is intoxicating. This is something that nothing else gives me. And yeah, it just became that thing that I kept going for and looking after. And then the third show I did was probably the worst I've ever done. And I did like just under 15 minutes and not a single chuckle. And I'm so happy that it happened like then, because, you know, I got too cocky too quick, and I thought I was the guy, you know. And then it was like, boom, respect the art form. And then I was like, okay, there's a lot more to this. So yeah, I've been going since then.
Yeah. I've been following you recently, Hamad. It's really good stuff. What sort of themes would you cover in your early shows to kind of connect to the audience, or what kind of ideas were you focused on early on?
I feel, again, I think I'm just fascinated by how people do things. I feel like there's so many things we attribute of success, but then at the end, the core of it, there's a bunch of people behind it. You know, the best tower or the most beautiful painting, or at the end of the day, there's someone there, and you know, there's a human element. So I try and focus on the kind of interactions between different people that I just witness from day to day, or, you know, like if registering my daughter in school, like, for example, is a process that I never thought would be this, you know, frustrating. But, you know, these little things, they form scenarios that I would then write and try and take from whether I've seen someone or I've seen a situation unfold in front of me, and kind of situational realism. And I focus on, like, you know, the Arab identity early on, because that was, you know, I go on stage as a Qatari, I wear my soul, and I, you know, they're like, who's this guy? Why is it okay for this guy to tell these stories? So early on, I learned that I had to be the subject of every joke. I had to be the punchline, so I can get the rapport and get the audience to engage. But now it's more, you know, read between the lines.
Nice. Yeah.
I think that's pretty brave, because when you said you wear your thobe, you know, your traditional Qatari attire, and you're on stage, I'm pretty sure just this image for our listeners will make a huge difference, right? Because we don't see stand-up comedy as a traditional art form in the MENA region. You talked about how you have these 3 or 4 professions that you're supposed to go into, right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
that's the mindset. That's the prevailing mindset. And in our research at the Wilson Center, zooming into workforce development and youth and the challenge of joblessness and finding what you want to do in life, this always comes up. And family is a huge part of it. So I guess my question is, how did your family basically handle this sort of, unconventional journey that you took?
I think they just dealt with it. I'm like, no, I have a very supportive family. My parents are, I owe them a lot. I'm the eldest son. So I don't know, in our culture, in the Arab world, the eldest son means something. And, I'm one of 8 children. So I think there's enough people to pay attention to after me, I guess. I don't know. No, we have a very great relationship. My mother still doesn't understand exactly what I do. But from the entertainment element and production. But we have a great relationship. They're very supportive. And now what also part of the Arab culture is, now that I have given them grandkids, I no longer matter. So I think I'm just kind of, just, hey mom, here are my children. Bye. So that's kind of the dynamic of because you get married, right? And then you need a baby like 10 months after the wedding. And if it doesn't exist, they start asking questions that, no man or woman in the early journey of their marriage wants to tell their parents.
That sounds about right. Well, I'm going to pass it over to Ahmad, but the one thing I will say is that, congratulations to you for breaking that barrier, because I'm sure that you're setting an example to so many other young people who want to do something a little bit different, particularly in the arts.
Yeah, and it's weird because I didn't know that I was doing, that wasn't the aim at the time. And then 10 years later, they're older and they were watching the show or they saw me on stage. And now that, I don't know how to deal with compliments or admiration. It's weird. But when younger people come up to you and say, I can be an artist now because you did this. And I'm like, don't blame me if it doesn't work out. That's all I'm saying.
Good answer.
Yeah.
So Hamad, I view you as an all-around media person because you've done interviews with people, you've done shows, not just comedy. What would you tell young stand-up comics or aspiring stand-up comics about the industry? Qatar, as is Jordan, it's a very small market in itself. For live shows, when you're doing live gigs, what would you tell them about the industry in terms of what else they can get into in media? Is it? I've noticed that you've not just stuck to comedy, but you've done other things. So what's the landscape like?
For me, the outlet was then to work in advertising and agencies and writing and doing kind of copywriting. I started as a copywriter and then I've worked my way up to creative or associate creative director and became someone who can take an idea, produce it and package it and move it on. So there's 10 years ago, the amount of visual platforms that exist today weren't around. So the amount of things that you can do nowadays and If you're just leaving school now or leaving university, you could also start earning really good money for something that you do that is your passion because of the tools that are available. I mean, look, we're talking now, it's crystal clear. You're in Amman and I'm in Qatar. And I we're having this amazing discussion, and it still fascinates me that all of these tools are available and people can, do them and use them to make good on what they're good at. So there's so many outlets, and the world of digital is taking us to these places where you can get to a point where you're earning money from something that you love doing. And that's not always what a market or a job market offers. So we're at a cusp of change, and that's a beautiful thing. Change is always a good thing, in my opinion. And yeah, my advice is to just understand what you're good at, where you're spending most of your time kind of pursuing. Be aware of that, number one. I honestly wasn't aware of what I was doing until much later. So take the time to kind of understand where you're going. Look around every now and then and be patient. Nothing happens overnight. As much as we want it to be insta money, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's definitely not the case. So I'm just curious, because you mentioned your company and your experience in just media production, creation, innovation. What are some of the challenges that you faced, not just as an artist, because I think we tapped into some of that, but also as a business owner, as an entrepreneur? Or did you face any challenges?
My first venture was quickly when I moved back 2011. I set up a company a year later, 2012, towards the end of 2012, and it's called Legacy Sports. It's still in operation now. We've kind of changed our core, but the essence of it was we were an ECA company, extracurricular activities for school kids. So we would go and rent venues and provide coaching and things like that. And the challenge was, first of all, how do you form a company? What are the government regulations? There are certain activities that we would run that weren't licensable or didn't exist in the, so there's so many things about knowing the market, knowing your offering. I was idea, execute, and over the time you learn from your journey, and there are key stakeholders that exist in order for you to set up your business. And as much as we want everything done immediately or quickly, and demand things from public sector or licenses or venues, but there is, at the end of the day, there's a core market that you're servicing. So taking your business idea and then turning it into a reality, the challenges were first understanding how to go about it. Like I had no idea what it meant to create a business. And it was just like, oh, you set up a commercial registration. And then a year later, we're looking at so many different elements of how to run the business and what, reporting and licensing and things like that. So there's so many elements that I don't know and still to this day don't know. But there are so many people that are there to help you. And you should understand that these challenges are opportunities. I view them to just kind of keep going. So understanding what the layout was and what the processes of everything were and what you as a business owner have as a responsibility towards the state or towards the market. So it started off as a passion project and it still exists. So yeah, you have to be kind of over time understand that there's a niche that you want to service, and you also need to be able to be flexible and, deviate from your core depending on market demands and client demanding. So the first kind of tech venture that I tried to build was looking at the gaps in this business and seeing if we can automate the coach versus venue versus, and that led me into a whole host of different challenges and understanding what the policies around creating a tech business were. And that then again became working with other entrepreneurs, looking at accelerator programs, looking at a viable MVPs, friends and family funds, and like trying to raise capital and what seeding is and what pre-seed is. It's like a whole world that I was completely oblivious to. But it's, it starts somewhere, and you just need to be aware of the surrounding space. So pay attention to what's happening around you. And then at the end of the day, there's someone who will pay you for this service. So it's just kind of marrying those two together.
Yeah. Hamad, I think our some of our audience might notice that your accent has a bit of Irish in it.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that you spent some years there as a kid.
I did, yeah.
So where did you grow up other than Qatar, or was it mainly where were you?
So I was born here in 88 in Qatar. And then in 92, we went to America because my father did his master's. And we came back in 97 to Qatar. And in 1998, we went to Ireland. Or 97, I can't remember. 97, 98, that time. We went to Ireland for my father to continue doing his PhD. And I was 9, 10 years old. So I turned into a proper dog. So I grew up in Dublin, came back, I was 16, and no one understood a word I was saying in Doha. So I had to kind of enunciate, pronounce the T's and roll your R's. I still got R, proper. But yeah, nice. I have a knack for accents, and that helps kind of with the performances and storytelling.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I grew up in Dublin, and it's hard to wash it off. I'll tell you, our dinner table at home is the best in terms of, like, my 2 older sisters, very American accents. Me and my brother, 2 younger brothers, like Dublin, and then the younger generation is more of what I call the international GCC accent. It's a little American, little Australian, little, like international.
Little British.
Babies. Yeah. Like you'll have some of them in Jordan that will come here and they will click it with the private school kids from here because it's the same kind of accent, right? So we have all of them available at dinner at our house. So it's quite an interesting.
That's a good menu. That's a really good menu. So, Hamad, as we chit-chatted earlier, International Youth Day falls on August 12th. So this month we're really trying to highlight all things youth on our podcast. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on some of the issues that youth are facing in Qatar.
From the different hats, at the end of the day, there's people, right? And the way I see it is, if you're good at something and you feel like there's merit in what you're offering, then there should be spaces for you. But that doesn't always seem to be the case. Like, we are in the cusp of in the region of a digital kind of transformation. And the last 2 years of COVID showed us that people can be productive and add value from anywhere in the world. So while we could say that there are certain challenges locally, there's also so many opportunities externally, just while you're still in the comfort of your space, right? So the way I see it is someone who's going to look for the hiring side of it. I need the younger, the more kind of, social media savvy, tech savvy kind of people who use and grow up with these tools. Like, they're the ones who are going to add value to me. So it's looking at the digital literacy of the next generation. I think for our generation and the generation before, we need to catch up. So it's not about it's not a race. understanding, and there has to be in the next few years a spirit of dialogue from both sides. And the only thing I can say is it's a matter of patience and it's a matter of time, because that's where the whole world's going. We're all using these tools and they're adding so much value. And, it's just, there's no kind of switch where you can get instant success, as much as it's hard work, dedication, and discipline. So, yeah, there's so many things, but take it easy, like relax, don't rush into things. Take time and get used to things taking time. I love the excitement, the energy, and the passion, but the worry is that you don't see the results and you drop, and then that begins to take its effect on you adversely. So be aware of what the situation is. Understand that there is time to get to that result, the desired result, and there are multiple variables that could either accelerate or get in the way of achieving those results. But if you cannot control them, if they're not in your hands to control, then just be patient and keep grinding at it.
Hamad, as a millennial, what advice do you have for younger, upcoming stand-ups, comics, content creators?
I mean, for me, I don't I feel like I'm not a millennial, but I am, I guess. There is a pressure to put out content and things like that because I've gone into this world. But at the same time, I know so many people who aren't content creators, and just, some of them are athletes, some of them are musicians, some of them are just accountants, legal people, they get on with their life. And I feel like the next generations, this is their thing, right? This is their space. They're the ones who can bring a lot of it, with platforms, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok now, with what's going on there. It's their time, right? It's not, I would seek advice from them. But yeah, to each one would be, if there are demands to anything that you want to go into, and if content creation and the content world is something that you want to go to, there are demands from that. If you were an athlete, there are demands for that. There's, demands for any role that you want to go into. But I feel like there might be a little bit more pressure for the next generation of comic or content creator because of how these platforms consume their daily media consumption behavior. I remember when we were kids, there was morning and afternoon. So that was the only time you could watch the TV, because it was early in the morning at breakfast time before school. There was a bit of cartoons on the telly. And then after you came back from school for a couple of hours, there was cartoons on the telly. Now I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. And my problem is trying to get their eyes off of the screen. It's a very different problem. So they are consumed by this, and it's part of their, inherently part of their lives. So I would learn from them, I think.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I don't think we've heard it from so many entrepreneurs, that instead of offering words of advice, that it's sort of the opposite. So I like that. It's a really nice way to wrap up the conversation. Thanks so much, Hamad, for your time, for your positivity, and for, again, breaking the mold. I think that's very brave, very courageous, and good luck with the rest of your journey.
Thank you so much. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Just proving once more that I'm not part of the millennial crowd. That I'm not the best. No, honestly, thank you guys for reaching out, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah.
And there are amazing people in Qatar. So if you want to talk to more, let me know. And if I can introduce you to a few, there's a lot of exciting things happening here. So for sure, thank you for your time and for your consideration. And yeah,
Good.
Thanks for the kind words as well, Marissa.
Good.
Cheers.
Thank you, Hamad.
This podcast is funded by a grant from the United States Department of State. The opinions, findings, and conclusions of this podcast are those of our guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the United States Department of State.